the Danny Baker situation, it's unfortunate that he tweeted it and people have to go, yes, you got to sack him because he's racist, he's racially biased. Danny, he's no more racially biased. I'm not going to say he's not racially biased because I believe we all are, but he's no more racially biased and probably less racially biased than people. Because what I say is real racists do not get caught.
Welcome to Ireland Unfiltered. This week's guest is John Barnes. I'm not sure we've had an interview like this in the series. Such a wide-ranging, compelling conversation with Barnes about race and society and nationalism and tribalism and all the things that are part of unfortunately are part of culture at the moment and part of society at the moment. And when John Barnes talks about these things, he makes such a compelling case. He speaks in a way where you have to listen, and it really was a privilege to sit and listen to him for this interview. So we're going to go straight into it now because it is worth listening to. Before we do, don't forget to subscribe on all the usual channels, and if you like the show, please give it a review. Here's John Barnes. John, welcome to Ireland Unfiltered. It's great to have you in Dublin.
Thank you. It's always good to be in Dublin.
Yeah, you've got family connections.
Family connections with Galway. My wife's family are from Galway. They live in Liverpool now, obviously, but I think that half of Liverpool have come over from the Emerald Isle.
Yeah, they have. And they're Fannings, your wife's family?
They're Fannings, yeah. They're McDonough's, but Fannings as well. Right. So, yeah, I've not been. They keep trying to get me to Galway races. I'm resisting the urge because I've seen pictures. And maybe in my younger day, maybe.
Right. I just want to talk about the Liverpool team at the moment, just a little bit on football now. Like, I saw those pictures of you celebrating the Divock Origi goal against Newcastle and the Barcelona game on beIN Sports. And I was wondering how, like, does the nature of what you think about the team and how you feel about a club change as you get older and you go further away from being a player? Like, you become more engaged as a spectator and a fan?
No, I'm much more engaged as a player.
Right.
Liverpool is my team, so of course I wanted to win, and I do get excited when they score goals. But I'm not fanatical who will travel home and away and go to all the games. I'll go to very few games, and I was actually working in Qatar watching the game. So of course they captured me in that moment. But I'm not as fanatical as a real fan. You know, people who go all the time and they can't sleep if Liverpool lose and stuff like that. But it's an interesting time. Not only is it interesting, it's a fantastic time for Liverpool Football Club because it's been a while since we've been as competitive as we are now.
Yeah.
And we are at a situation now whereby this is sustainable. We've had instances in the past, 2005 Champions League, even with Brendan Rodgers nearly winning the league, where we've nearly come close, but I never felt that it would have been sustainable for us to continue to do that the following season. Whereas this year, following on from last year, is the first year that gives me hope that, yes, we haven't won the league, we may not even win the Champions League. But looking at the consistency that we're showing week in, week out, I know that next year we will be there or thereabouts again. Because as I said, people talk about winning trophies. We finished second this year on 97 points. And people are disappointed we didn't win the trophy. And yes, we are disappointed. But finishing on 97 points and losing one game is an incredible season.
Yeah.
People say, what do we have to do to improve? I say not lose any games. But that's unrealistic. So if we were to win the league next year with 80 points, and we finished second this year on 97 points, while people may say, yes, we've won the league, so it's a better season. For me, this is a better season because it shows you the consistency in every single game that you're winning and you're not losing, shows you the team you are. So it's been fantastic.
I thought it was interesting when you were on Sky at the weekend that they were talking about 1990 and winning the league and scoring the goal that won the league. And you were kind of vague on the details of that. And I thought maybe it's so long ago, but also the fact that at that time, it was almost routine. Like, I think in 1990, it was expected that Liverpool were going to win.
Well, it was expected of Liverpool, but also in terms of your attitude towards winning the league. And it's not a blasé attitude or a complacent attitude. It's an attitude that, as soon as it's finished, you forget about it. You move on.
Yeah.
And you have to do it again. So therefore, after winning the league, we came in and Ronald Moran just had the medals in a plastic bag, and he gave me the medals and he said, pre-season training, July the 7th. We didn't make a song and dance about it because for you to keep that hunger and that determination to do it again, you have to forget about it.
Yeah.
We also were like that when we lost to Arsenal in 89. Losers medals this time, and he said pre-season training July the 7th. We didn't wallow in self-pity and despair, because if you did, you would never raise yourself up to do it again. So we approached every game and every season with integrity, determination, humility, intensity. And if we won, we won. If we lost, we look forward to either improving or to doing it again. So we never got carried away. The way we treated triumph and disaster was exactly the same. So a lot of people think I was being blasé when I said I couldn't really remember the goal, but it wasn't. It was that, yes, you enjoy it. It's forgotten about. You have to look forward to the next journey.
The cliche then is kind of, that you couldn't have imagined that it would take this long before Liverpool would win the league again. But I was wondering, because you were there for a few years after that, and I was wondering if there was a point over the next 3, 4, 5 years where you thought, actually, it's going to be hard to get back.
Yeah. We won it in 90, then 91, 92. We were still challenging. Of course, Kenny left, Graham Souness came in. I rushed my Achilles tendon, but it was fine. 92, 93. Well, I think probably around 95, I then realized that it wasn't going to happen in my time at Liverpool. I was there till 1997. Because it got to the stage whereby Liverpool then became a team whereby when we played well, we were playing really well. But we couldn't grind results out. And you win the league March, April, May.
Yeah.
It's a long season. Pitches aren't great. Players are a bit tired. You're not playing well, but you're getting results. We weren't getting results then. What we were doing is that we're playing brilliantly and winning games. Then all of a sudden, if we didn't play well, we would lose. Whereas the sign of champions, which we've seen this year for both Manchester City and Liverpool, is that even when you're not playing well, you can get a result. And we couldn't do that. So I always felt when the fans were getting excited coming into April. Then, of course, in the the late 95, 96, and then Stan Collymore, Robbie Fowler were playing really well, scoring goals in Newcastle 4-3. We're in the top 3, close to the top. Then come April, I always felt we'd fall away. Because April, as you've seen, even with Manchester City and Liverpool, is that they're games when you're not going to play well, but you have to get a result. And I always felt Manchester United, and what we were saying then was, oh, weren't they lucky? Because we watched the game and they weren't playing well, and we're saying they're lucky because they're not playing well and they're picking up points. But that's the sign of champions. So it got to that stage after 95. I was there till 97, where I really felt no matter what was happening with us, because we were close coming into January, February, March, but I always felt we'd fall away.
And was that, because I saw you say that you had some frustrations at the time, that there were a couple of times where you left you felt the discipline wasn't there in training, and you walked out off the training field and stuff like that. That was directly linked to those failures, in your view? Absolutely,
because of course, when I first went to Liverpool, and of course back then I went to Liverpool in 87, and football in England generally in the 80s, there was a big drinking culture and going out culture. And Liverpool was no different to anyone else. However, when you win a football match, you don't win it on the Saturday, you win it on the preparation Monday to Friday. I say that to my kids, which is true. You don't pass the exam on the day you take it in your preparation. And regardless of what happened off the field, once we trained properly. And that was a real Liverpool thing from Bill Shankly's time. No matter what goes on, you train properly, and we train properly. Monday to Friday, we train properly. The training, as far as I was concerned, in those latter years became a bit lax. I'm not talking about in terms of whether players were going out or not, but the attitude in training. It was a very lackadaisical kind of an atmosphere, particularly when we were doing well, because we felt we'd won on Saturday, so therefore Monday and Tuesday we don't have to train particularly well. And the discipline, training-wise, and I knew that we're not going to be consistent unless we put into training what we put into the games, what we actually do in training. And training was very frustrating for me. And obviously I was a different type of a player. I ruptured my Achilles tendon, and I was then going to be the leader, if you like. I'm 35, 34 years old, and a lot of young players. And at Liverpool, what they always did was that you learned from the senior players. As a young Ian Rush and Ronnie Whelan, when they were first there, they learned from the senior players, because Liverpool don't coach you. They don't coach you. They allow you to use your initiative to be the player you are. That is why they never had lots of young players at Liverpool. The younger players, you'll have one or two coming in and you learn from what you saw, because they do not coach you. Now, why Manchester United were successful with the kids was because Alex Ferguson influences them on and off the field as a young player, which is what young players need. I got my influence from Graham Taylor. Peter Beardsley got his influence, Ray Houghton, any of the players got their influences from but then when they then came to Liverpool at 23, 24, they were already men. And therefore, the club just said, you go out there and you perform. Use your initiative. So Liverpool wasn't a club to have lots of young players, because if our philosophy is, you go and play, and you have to have the right mentality, if you're a 17, 18, 19-year-old who you haven't learnt about having the right determination, the right attitude, then just to be left to your own devices is not a recipe for success. So that was, and then of course in the latter years there were no senior players. Ian Rush and myself were the only two. There was such a big turnover of the Houghtons and the Whelans, the McMahons, the Bearsleys, the Mulbys. They all left too soon, in my opinion, whereby if they had stayed and one or two young players came in, learned what they saw, then they became the senior players, and that would have continued. So it was a bit of a frustrating period for me at that time. But it's a shame because we had a fantastic group of players, potentially. The Fowlers, the Redknaps, the Collymores, and when we played well, you saw Newcastle, we played really well. But, we just couldn't be consistent.
Take me back then, because you talked about Graham Taylor there, but I'm interested in, where you got that discipline initially. Because your parents, your father was in the army.
Yeah.
Your mother was a television presenter?
Television presenter, yes, in Jamaica. And she came here and she also did a year as a television presenter here in England. But I came from a very disciplined background. My father's a colonel in the Jamaican army, which was the British West Indies Regiment. So of course, if you're brought up in the army, and as much as I fought against it as a youngster, it was a very strict upbringing. Yeah. And I suppose, as much as people then saw me at Watford, and even when I went to Liverpool, and they're talking about the way I'm playing is playing without any fear and just playing off the cuff and playing with freedom, I played with responsibility, a lot of responsibility, as much as people may not have seen that. And interestingly, as much as I said, growing up, and my parents were very strict, I was always sneaking out, and I was never naughty, but I was always a little bit loud and always trying to get away with things.
Did you rebel a bit?
I didn't rebel, but I was always, when you say getting into trouble, sneaking out and coming in late. And
you were the youngest?
I was the youngest. I mean, a year in between all of us. Right. So I never got into trouble, but I would always try and push the boundaries. Yeah. Not in a bad way, just like, because when I came to England, all my friends, because, we live, as much as we lived in Highgate, and we lived my dad was a military attaché, so, we lived in houses in central London, and it's a middle-class family. Football is a working class sport. So all of my friends were working class boys from the inner cities of London. And of course, from that point of view, maybe not because they're working class, but at 14 and 15, they could go out and come back home at 4 o'clock in the morning, which I couldn't do. Yeah. So I was always trying to get away with my friends being out till 4 in the morning. I couldn't, so I had to sneak home or pretend I'm staying at their houses. So little hijinks things. However, because ever since I was growing up in Jamaica, this has been conditioned into me in terms of having discipline without me even knowing it. So as much as I'm trying to push the boundaries, I was a responsible person. Yeah. Because even when I first went to my first football club, and I mentioned this the other day, and I didn't even think about it, I was never a centre half, never a centre back, but I played for 4 years as a centre back for my youth team at Stowe Boys Club because no one else wanted to. And I felt a responsibility to the team. Okay. So as much as I was never a centre back, when I came to England as a 12, 13-year-old, went to the club, in Jamaica, I was playing for the under-16s at 11, playing as a winger, playing as an attacking midfield player, as a centre forward. I come to this club and no one wants to play there, so I said, okay, I'll play there. Yeah. So for 4 years, that's where I played. And as much as I played there for 4 years, my youth team coach knew that that's not my position, so he played me there. But then when he took two of us to play for the men's team at 16, he put me on the left wing, having never played there, because he knew that's what I could do. Then 1 year later, I signed for Watford and I'm playing in the first team as a 17-year-old left winger. So the point I was trying to make is that I felt a sense of responsibility because everybody wanted to attack. So I did that. So I think subconsciously I always had this discipline in me, although I always fought against it and didn't think it was for me. But then going to Watford, which is what Watford was all about. So coming first from my parents with that responsibility and that discipline, going to a club like Watford, whereby that's what Graham Taylor espoused. He demanded from his senior players, never mind the junior 17-year-old players. Pat Rice played for Arsenal, did the double. When Pat Rice was there, he had to have so much discipline and be part of the team, and that whole team ethic, no one being more important than anybody else, was instilled in me even more. So by the time I went to 23 years old to Liverpool, whereby you're left to your own devices, on and off the field, I already had that inbuilt discipline to not get carried away with the trappings of being at a big club and all that brings.
But when you came to England in 76, you were 13, but you didn't think you were going to stay in England. Your father...
I knew I wasn't going to stay in England. It was a 4-year posting, a diplomatic posting. I'm coming for 4 years, so we're going to go back to Jamaica.
And he was posted because it's a story that Michael Manley asked him, the Prime Minister of Jamaica asked him where was his loyalty to Jamaica or to Michael Manley. Is that correct?
Well, they didn't ask him in that so much in those words.
Right.
It was more like, because of course what was happening then was Jamaica, and my mother only told me this after, I found out after, because my dad was next in line to become head of the army, and Jamaica was becoming quite socialist at the time, which America would not have liked. They're getting quite friendly with Cuba, so of course, as we can now see what's happening in Venezuela and places like that. Not Jamaica's even on that level, but politically, he was asked to kind of like pick sides, and of course, being an army officer from Sandhurst, he said that my loyalty is to the country. I'm not a politician. He's not interested in who the prime minister is.
Yeah.
His job is, as an army officer, to protect the country. And he was 100% true in terms of what he would have done, because my father was the man with the most integrity I ever met. Ever met.
In what way? What do you mean by that?
He did the right thing. He did what the right thing would be. And as an army officer, he did the right thing as what the army demands. So if the right thing was to stage a coup to overthrow the government, he would not have done that. Even though that politically may have been the right thing, he would not have done that, because that is not what an army officer does. An army officer serves the incumbent. Even if you don't agree with him, you do your job, you do your duty as an army officer to protect the country, whoever the country leader has to be. And by that, as we've seen throughout the world, that as much as that may be the rationale and the right thing to do as an army officer, that doesn't happen in so many countries. And I suppose that people were wary of that. And so therefore, a position was created to ease him out the way. Because Jamaica doesn't necessarily need a military attaché to the UK. America does. You've got hundreds of thousands of troops. Jamaica doesn't. So this position was kind of created to kind of like get him out the way. And of course, he was here for 4 years, and a new brigadier came in as a brigadier. Then he got recalled after and just stayed as a colonel, and I stayed to play.
But when he went back, then he was head of the forces.
He wasn't head; he was still second in command.
So, but when they went to Grenada in '84,
in Grenada, he felt that the Caribbean had to have a presence in its backyard, because as much as this is an American-led operation. The Caribbean, because this is a Caribbean island, so therefore the Caribbean have to be involved. And it's funny because, of course, the Jamaican army is a relatively big army. The Caribbean is the biggest army of the English-speaking Caribbean islands, of all the Caribbean islands. So he had to go, and he told me some stories about it when he went to, because of course by then most of the Caribbean islands had an army, but of course the army in some of the smaller Caribbean islands would have been about 10 men with a slingshot, So he said he had to go to certain countries and say, listen, what's happening in Grenada, we have to go and support the Americans, but we have to be there because it's our backyard. And some of them were like, well, we've only got 10 men and whatever. And so the Barbadian army got involved as well. So he then led the Caribbean force just to be with the Americans. So he was there with the Americans. The Americans led it, but he said he was there with the Americans, and these Cuban men they were like school teachers and PE teachers and stuff who were there, who then were told to, take over the country because they had a couple of guns and there's no army in Grenada. So they took over the airport, and he said there was only probably 100 of them with some guns, and thousands of Americans with tanks and war missiles and everything like that. And he was saying they were intercepting messages from the Cubans back to Cuba, saying, listen, there's 10,000 Americans with guns, we've just got a slingshot, what do we do? And they were saying, no, you fight to the last man and stuff like that. So it wasn't a war. But what it goes to show, and once you know about politics and interest about spheres of influence, is that when people talk about why was that necessary, and it wasn't necessary because who really cares in the grand scheme of things as to whether Grenada was going to become socialist or communist? Because you cannot allow, if you want to talk about socialism, to succeed anywhere which is close to where you are, because of course, and there are certain countries who are socialist, and socialism can work if it's allowed to work. We see what's going on in Venezuela, but if it's successful, and you look at where geographically those countries are, and then if you talk about Venezuela, for example, and you can move up into Central America, and it's successful, and the country above you, Costa Rica, Panama, see that's successful, the next country up is Mexico, and then the next country is America. So if it works there, and it can influence people around you, which is why if you look at what goes on in the USSR, Russia, and you look at countries on its borders, where you have Ukraine and these ex-Soviet bloc countries who are now democratic, and Russia can't really allow that to happen too close to their borders. So when things like that happen, there are many more reasons as to why people do things politically, countries do things politically, which the average man wouldn't understand, which we didn't understand, because what doesn't matter whether Grenada is going to become socialist, but America, in terms of spheres of influence, cannot allow success of any, which is why they had the big problem with Cuba for so many years.
And were you worried about him when he was going into that invasion? Like, no. America had invaded Grenada. That was the Reagan invasion for the reasons, as you say.
I mean, listen, I knew the situation in terms of how powerful Cuba may have been. And the threat that they carried. I'll tell you what, I was so happy that my dad was not around or involved when there were wars, because I know 100% that my father, if there were wars, would not have survived the war.
Why?
100%. Because everything he did, he led from the front. When growing up, I would watch him with the men, the privates, and they would go on recces, and they'd go on runs, and everything they did, he was the first in line. And if there was a battle, he would have been in the front line going with his men. And of course, okay, he may not have died, but I know 100% he would not have put anybody before him. That is why when he came to Sandhurst, I asked him about Sandhurst, and he said when he came to Sandhurst as a black West Indian, one of the first recruits to go to Sandhurst, he was there with Andrew Parker Bowles, Camilla's husband, with all of these great men who became great men, and he knows the perception they have of him, so he volunteered for everything. So he became heavyweight boxing champion at Sandhurst, never boxed before. But when he came, he said, I know I have to prove myself. So he played rugby as a fullback for Sandhurst, never played rugby before. He played football for Jamaica and cricket for Trinidad Secondland when he lived there. So he was a sportsman. But having never played rugby and having never boxed, he knew that he had to volunteer for everything. So, he said, and he hated the cold. And even to this day, when we come, somebody said that he would play and he would not wear gloves. He said he would be freezing, but he would never show any form of weakness, because he knows the perception of the Caribbeans or black people generally is that they are inferior, if you like. So I know 100%, had there been a war, he would never have stood at the back and said to his men, you go forward. And I've met so many soldiers, private soldiers particularly, because he loved the men, the men who are going to do the work. And they all loved him, because I met so many soldiers after who said that, they just loved my dad because he was always one of them, as much as he's, high up in the army.
And what was his feeling about the fact that he had to do that stuff to dispel a myth? Like, did he have any feelings of...
None whatsoever. No. If that's what it takes, that's what it takes. Of course, now we can talk about, it shouldn't be allowed, and, you have to respect me, and, it's wrong because it's discriminating. It is, but what we're going to do about it, particularly in the 1950s, you get on with it. So he was really, just get on with it. Yes, it may not be fair, but it doesn't matter if it's fair, because life isn't fair. Life isn't fair for so many different groups of people. And if you want to get on in life and you want to be prepared for life, it's great if it isn't like that, and it's fantastic, and you understood that. Because, like, for example, he would have loved Winston Churchill. And we talk about Winston Churchill here. And we talk about Winston Churchill in 1955 saying that we want to limit West Indian immigration, and a good slogan would be keep England white. So we know what Winston Churchill is all about. And my dad's not stupid. He also understands that. But he looks at him and he thinks he's a great hero because of the war and what he did in the war. And so I suppose because of, being brought up in Sandhurst, he would have been tainted as well in terms of the perception he may have of the British Army. And while he's not naive enough to know that, there were atrocities committed by the British Army in Amritsar and in Kenya, and whatever happens, he really believed in the empire because he was a British Army officer. When it became independent, Jamaica became independent, so he's now the Jamaican Army. So he's a colonel in the Jamaican Army. But it was the British West Indies Regiment before. He went to Sandhurst, he trained at Sandhurst. Everything he learned, the books he read about, all the battles of, the Crimean War and the altruistic battles that England fought. Were they? But, this is the way we are brought up to believe. So, but in terms of, even growing up in Jamaica, it's now the Jamaican Army. Christmas Day, Queen's speech stands up to attention.
Right, okay.
Even when we came here, every Christmas Day, he would stand up to attention. And while we were there when the Queen speaks, stand up to attention when the national anthem plays. That's what conditioning does for you.
And did he this funny thing is that on your mother's side, your grandfather had sort of a background on the other side of things, if you like, as he helped set up the Labour Party with Michael Manley's father. Michael
Manley with my mother's uncle. Frank was and dad, but her uncle Ken, with Norman Manley, Alexander Bustamante. They were actually put in prison for sedition to try and overthrow the government. Don't forget, this is a time when there were a lot of people talking about independence. And of course, Ghana had become independent, Jamaica was becoming independent. So my dad was in the army. But interestingly, my mother's grandfather, he was the first black editor of the newspaper Gleaner. And when they had Marcus Garvey and fighting for freedom, and you know, there was a bit of a story about my great grandfather, and because of course he was part of the establishment, and Marcus Garvey, and that kind of like dynamic of them clashing heads, and of course my grandfather then, and I remember doing Who Do You Think You Are, and they're trying to suggest that my grandfather was bumped off by Marcus Garvey's cronies because he was, you know, editor of the Gleaner, whereas truth be known, he liked to drink.
Okay.
He might have been Irish, I'm not sure. and he fell over and drowned in Old Harbour. But they talk about that was under circumstances because he was writing against Marcus Garvey. So it's a bit strange that my father was part of this establishment. My mother's father was part of the government to overthrow the British. Listen, they were going to become independent as everyone's becoming independent anyway.
Yeah.
But at times they were on other ends of the spectrum when it came to politics.
Now tell me, did your father have some part in the Jamaican bobsleigh team as well?
Well, once again, he did. Not in the bobsleigh team.
George Fitch,
if you remember the film, and we'll have to talk about the film so people understand.
Cool Runnings.
Cool Runnings, and what's the name of the actor?
John Candy.
John Candy. Yeah. So John Candy played George Fitch.
Yeah.
So George Fitch came to my father, and he said he wants 4 army officers to be the Jamaica bobsleigh team. And my dad said to him, you can't have 4 army officers to be the bobsleigh team, because if you want to have a Jamaica bobsleigh team, you have to have trials. You can't just pick 4 army officers. And George Fitch had been coming to Jamaica for years, and what he liked was the fact that they were athletic, as you can see with the sprinters we have. And his thing was that I can get sprinters to become, or athletic people, to be in the bobsleigh, because if you can run, you can drive, fine. But he also had been coming to Jamaica for so long that he understood the nature of Jamaica, which is not a judgment, it's a fact, or it was a fact. So he knew that if I just choose anybody who could do good at athletics from Jamaica, and it could be somebody who's just a normal boy from the street who can run, when we go to America to train, we're not going to see him again. Because, of course, in Jamaica, a lot of people go up to America to form a life illegally, and they can't get there. But if you can get there because you're the bobsleigh team, then it could go missing. Yeah. So he wasn't insulting Jamaicans when he actually said that to my dad, that I can't do that. And my dad understood. So my dad said, okay, what I'll let you do is I'll let you train 4 army officers, the good athletes, train them, and then you have to have the trials after. So he did that. 3 of them got in.
Right.
A friend, who was a friend of mine actually, Tal Stokes, one of the army officers who was very good. He then became one of the bobsleigh. But the 4th one didn't.
Okay.
So it was just a normal boy from the streets who became the 4th member. Okay. And then the 4th army officer became the 1st reserve. The first time they went to Canada, absconded. The 3rd one, never saw him again. So then the 4th army officer, because he knew that an army officer would not abscond when they went to America. So that is how, so the Jamaica bobsleigh team were army officers who were good athletes. And that's how my dad was involved in it. He had,
he wasn't, and George Fitch wasn't very happy, I don't think, with the John Candy portrayal, from what I've read.
Yeah, I don't know. I just know that, you know, that it was a good film. And it wasn't, they didn't come 3rd and the thing didn't come off. They kind of like, but it was okay.
But anyway, so when you came to England then, you thought you were going to come, you thought it was going to be a temporary thing. It was a 4-year posting. And what did you think your career was going to be? What did you think your life was going to be? Because you played football.
I didn't have a clue because, of course, I always played football in Jamaica. Yeah. And I knew that I would have gone back to Jamaica and played football. Yeah. There's no professional football, but I played for the team. Cavaliers was the team I supported, and I wanted to play for them, you know, before I came to England, and thought if I go back, that's going to be my team. I also got offered a scholarship to go to Washington University, a football scholarship. Yeah. So I knew I'd have gone to Washington and done a degree in whatever, I don't know, but played football. You get a football scholarship, you go on the premise of your football, but you do a degree and there's no professional football, so you get a job doing whatever, maybe living in America. So I never thought about staying in England and being a professional footballer, but I always knew I would play football because, of course, everywhere there's football. It may not be professional, but you play wherever you are. So it's not until a year before I actually became professional that I thought, when Watford taxi driver saw me. So back then, but I still would have played wherever, be it in America, be it back in Jamaica. So I never expected to be a professional footballer in England, no.
And then you joined Watford, and you said Graham Taylor, you said, was in many respects very similar to your father in the sense that there was that discipline as well.
Absolutely. And of course, Bertie Mee, who was the manager of Arsenal when they did the double, came to the house, and that's what my parents liked about Watford. Bertie Mee, the technical director, as it was then, would take time to come to your house to visit with the parents when there's a 17-year-old boy who may be left behind in England, to assure them that he'll be well looked after. Now, this is not a 17-year-old superstar boy who everyone is after and you have to come and look after him. They did that with all the young players. That's why Watford looked after all their young players in terms of the interest they showed in them, the respect they showed the parents by saying to them that he will be looked after, by having someone like Bertie Mee come to the house. At other clubs, they'll just say, oh, well, you're going to stay. We're not interested in your parents. They're going to go back. So my parents liked that. And my dad also remembered Bertie, because Bertie Mee, I remember I was a young boy in Jamaica when Arsenal came in 1971, I think it was. They came to play in Jamaica against the national team. I was at the National Stadium, and there was a riot. And of course, the army was brought in. So my dad, being the head of all the sports in the army, he remembered he had to be there with Bertie. And Bertie Mee was the Arsenal manager, so he had to get the players out onto the coach and stuff. So they kind of my dad reminded Bertie of that situation, and he kind of remembered him. So that also, made it a little bit more comfortable for my dad, knowing that, because I'm a 17-year-old boy being in the country for 5 years, and they're leaving me.
Yeah.
Now, I'm 17. I have no relatives, no family here whatsoever. Suppose it doesn't work out. I got into the first team within 2-3 months, and everything is history. Yeah. However, the chances are I'm going to be in the reserves till I'm 21.
Yeah.
May even not make it at Watford, so I'm going to then go to another club. I don't have any family. Where am I going to live? How am I going to be looked after? So it was a nervous time for my family in terms of just leaving me behind. So they had to really make sure that, everything. I could always then go back to Jamaica if it doesn't work out. But to leave a 17-year-old boy with no I've got cousins, aunties, nobody here.
And were you nervous?
Not at all. I was so excited. Because, of course, I'm going to be playing football. Yeah. And I didn't know what else I wanted to do anyway. My sister became a lawyer. They're very academic. And all the family are academic apart from me. So they were quite happy to leave me behind, because they thought, well, what else is he going to do? So let him stand and play football.
But you made your debut at Stamford Bridge in 1981. Did you from the get-go then, did you experience racist abuse, and did that surprise you?
Well, I came to England when I was 12. I just became 13, and then all of a sudden I'm now going out with friends in London, and you see the dynamic of the National Front, and you see what goes on. So 4 years later, I am in that, so I see it and I feel it, so I know it's around. And of course, having gone to football matches before as a 15, 16-year-old to QPR, used to go and watch QPR play Arsenal, you see it. I'm now in the crowd as in the North Bank, and I'm hearing things and seeing things. So, now that I'm playing, of course it happens. Yeah. So we're not naive to it. And of course, at that particular time, it was just the way it was. So it wasn't a surprise to me or to any of the other players at all. So at Chelsea, and if you played at Millwall or at West Ham and places like that. But what I always felt was, I remember playing at West Ham, where I probably noticed it most. I don't know why, but for some reason I did. And I remember looking at Bobby Barnes, a black player, played for West Ham, and then when he played well, the crowd would cheer him. And then I'm black, he's black, they're cheering him and they're booing me. And I thought, well, if I played for West Ham, they'd probably be cheering me. So it was like water off a duck's back. Never affected me in any way, shape or form. First of all, I was very fortunate in terms of the way I was brought up, because I was brought up to be a fully empowered human being.
Yeah.
Being brought up as a light-skinned Jamaican from a middle-class family, and seeing the way that even light-skinned middle-class Jamaicans would feel dark-skinned working-class Jamaicans, and seeing that discrimination that they had with a feeling of superiority over everybody else. And being from the family I'm in Jamaica, I am superior to other Jamaicans. This is subconscious, because of course you see it. You're not particularly aware of it, but you just know that I've got a driver who takes me to school. And when I see other black kids in Jamaica, I never look down on them in that respect, but in terms of the way I feel superior to them because of what life has shown me, meant that when I then came to England and I have that attitude of me being superior, when people then wanted to disenfranchise me for whatever reason, call it because I'm black or whatever, I never felt that, because I felt fully empowered. Right. So therefore, it never affected me. When they were used to do it, and I would be talking about, well, they can't be talking about me. I'm a middle-class kid who lived in Mayfair with my parents, and my dad's a military attaché, and we've got a chauffeur and stuff like that. So they can't be talking about me if they want to. So the way that I actually look at it was completely different to the way someone like Ian Wright, for example, or some black kid who'd been brought up disenfranchised with his family in England, who were discriminated against their whole life, who may feel it differently to me. So as much as people say to me now, and they were even saying it to me back then, oh, well done, keep your head up. I'm like, well, what do you mean? Oh, they must really be getting to you because of the discrimination. I said, no. I consider those people to be ignorant. I feel superior to them.
Right.
I'm living in Highgate in a house that's worth £1 million. Where do they live?
Yeah.
They're getting on a bus to go to go home, and they're living in a council estate and probably haven't got a job. How can they feel superior to me? So the whole black-white dynamic of the superiority of one group of people over the other, I never felt that at all. Obviously, I knew it went on, and I understood. But in terms of the way I reacted to it and the way I responded to it, it never bothered me at all.
But did it frighten you? Like if you were not maybe when you were playing, but if you were in the crowd at somewhere like QPR, if you were just around London, were there instances?
Listen, as I said, I grew up as a middle class kid in London. I lived in Highgate and Golders Green and these lovely areas. But where I mixed with my friends, I was in the inner cities in London. So growing up in London as a 15-year-old kid, if the National Front and we had to be fighting the National Front, we'd be fighting them. So I wasn't intimidated at all.
Okay.
Not at all, because of course in the crowd I'm there with my friends at Arsenal, and there are lots of us. And of course when you got lots of 15, 16-year-old boys who probably would get in trouble themselves, I wasn't intimidated by it whatsoever. Either in the crowd or when I played.
And what would you say your view on it has changed over the years, on what you experienced?
My view, I don't know, once again, I don't know whether this is a subconscious thing where I understood, like my father understood the fact that, yes, you are discriminated against, you are looked down upon. However, regardless, this is the way it is, so I've got to show them that I'm better than them. So he had to make a conscious effort to then show them that I'm better than them, and he had to be better to be equal. And he also understood that it wasn't personal. It's about the group of people that they belong to feeling superior to the group of people that you belong to. So therefore, they would look at Colonel Ken Barnes as a heavyweight boxing champion, and of course they love him, and he is the fullback for Sandhurst rugby team. So they love him. But as much as he knew that, he also knew that they would look at somebody else who's black and who's lesser than him and discriminate against them. Yeah. So for me, I always knew that even if I'm accepted and they love me, I knew that even my teammates and even other people who said that they love me would look at the average black person and discriminate against them. So I understood the nature of it. I understood the fact that this is the way it is because they can elevate me as John Barnes out of blackness, but how do they view the average black man in the street? Yeah. And I knew that they would be racially biased towards him, but I never ever blamed them or felt any kind of animosity towards them because I knew they couldn't help it because of the way they've been conditioned to think. Like I understood my dad was conditioned to think about Winston Churchill as being a great man because that's what he learned, whereas the reality is different. So I knew that these people who may feel superior to other people, and that manifests itself in terms of racial discrimination, they felt that way because of what life has wrongly shown them about who they are in relation to others. So, I'm going to chronologically talk about obviously what goes on today, but what goes on today is exactly the same. So when Raheem Sterling may be racially abused by those two Chelsea fans, they are not saying that we individually are superior to you. What they're saying is that the group we belong to is superior to the group you belong to, because that's what life has shown them. Because individually, he's on 300 grand a week, he's got a great house, he's accepted in all parts of the world, they're in a council house, can't spell their own name, so why do they feel superior? They don't individually, but they know that the group we belong to is superior to your group, so therefore we are superior to you.
And
so
the organising principles of society conform to what they
shows them every day. You just got to read the newspapers, and that had been going on even more prevalently back then. So I understood that. So I understood that this is not a personal thing that you feel superior to me, because of course you're not superior to me. I said you're going to get on a number 27 bus to go down the Archway Road when I'm getting in a nice big car. But what you're saying to me is actually true. Because you feel superior because what life has shown you. Life has shown you that the group you belong to, so you vicariously live through the group you belong to being superior to me based on what you have been wrongly, and that's what we have to challenge.
And when you say life, what do you mean? Like when you say society, what do you mean? Because when I listen to what you've said, and I've listened to your podcast and read an awful lot of what you've said, a lot of the thing I think when you're talking about society, there's an awful lot of stuff about the media and the role that plays in conditioning society. And I wonder how much of a force you feel the media plays.
That is the overriding force in forming perceptions, and it always has been for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. Now, the media is not just the newspapers or the television; it's what life shows us. So it's when a little blonde girl comes up and everyone goes, "Oh, look how cute she is! Why is she cute? Why is she more cute than anybody else?" This is what life has shown us. And when Raheem Sterling spoke about the media, he just should have winded to generalize rather than just talking about football players. Because, for example, that Australian terrorist who killed the Muslims in New Zealand, and we've seen this for years and years. When you hear blonde-haired, blue-eyed boy turns into mass murderer, even Jamaican yardie gangs, Nigerian drug dealers, that gives a negative perception of drug dealers, but also Jamaicans and Nigerians. You don't hear about Christian grooming gangs, you hear about Muslim grooming gangs. So that was a particular case that I felt strongly about when I had a discussion on LBC about how the media influences people's perceptions. And it's not just now that we're actually calling them out, because this has been going on for years where no one batted an eyelid in the past when people said that. And I made that point to the journalist about the blonde-haired, blue-eyed terrorist who became a mass murderer. And he actually said he didn't agree with me because he said that there was a jihadist who then, and they had a headline about him being in the school team or good at school, then he became a jihadist. And I said to him, but you're not even listening to what you're saying. Because if you try and compare those two, being in the school football team and being good at school are qualities attributed to goodness. So then when you become a terrorist, it's surprising. What qualities attributed to goodness is just having blonde hair and blue-eyed, which should make people surprised when you become a terrorist. But people didn't even think about that because they just go. And secondly, even the other day, there was a woman, Australian woman, who lived in America for 20 years, and the police killed her, and their family got £20 million. And it actually told a story, and it said that what had happened was she had phoned for, because there's some disturbance behind her house in an alleyway at night. And the police car pulled up in the alleyway, and while they're in the alleyway, she came out of her back door and came up to the police car, and the policeman shot her because he just saw someone at the window, and he said he was scared for his life, and he shot past it and killed her. And the prosecutor actually said, what was threatening about blonde hair and a pink T-shirt? And as much as we say that's terrible, because why should he say what's threatening about blonde hair and a pink T-shirt? We all know that they're right in what they say, because life has told us that there's nothing threatening about blonde hair and a pink T-shirt. But the interesting thing about that, more interesting than the blonde hair, is the pink T-shirt. Because when I talk about discrimination, colleges, universities, businesses, I talk about it in its entirety. I talk about it from a race point of view, from a sexist point of view, from a homophobic point of view, because it's all the same. Why it's all the same is because the perception we have of black people, of women, and of homosexuals, just to name a few. A black person's ability to think, a woman's ability to lead, and a homosexual's ability to fight in a war. So the pink T-shirt comment was interesting, because you would then think, yes, it's true. What's threatening about a pink T-shirt? Because, of course, pink T-shirt means effeminacy. You're effeminate. So I say to my friends, well, who would you rather fight? A man in a black T-shirt or a pink T-shirt? And regardless of how we would want to pretend, and political correctness will say, we'd rather, because that assumes that he must be gay because he got a pink T-shirt on. So all of this conditioning that we've had in terms of blonde hair, pink T-shirts, homosexuals, disabled people, we have become conditioned because those groups of people have been wrongly taught to us as being inferior. So therefore, that's why I say racism is completely understandable. That's why I start off all my talks by saying I'm racially biased.
And you talk about racial bias rather than racism.
Yes, because if you talk about call people racist, they get very negative. But if we say racially biased, because we assume, because we will never ever use a language that some people use, we are not racially biased. But we're somewhere along the spectrum, as we all are, because we're conditioned to think certain things. Now we're conditioned to think certain things, as when you look at from an Irish perspective, when in the 70s in London, no blacks and no Irish. From a Liverpool perspective, oh, you better watch your handbag because you know what Scousers are like. You know, from a Scotch perspective, they're not going to buy a drink or they're tight. So as much as this may be a laugh and a joke, once you keep reinforcing these stereotypes, it does stick. That's why I start off by saying, and I'm writing a book on it, and all my talks, I start off by saying, Frenchmen aren't sexy, Italians don't have style. But once you just reinforce this, Frenchmen with their accents are sexy. Why? So when Eric Cantona talks about the trawlers and the seagulls, he's considered to be a philosopher. I can guarantee you, if Tony Adams, not the new Tony Adams, the new and improved philosopher, but the old Tony Adams, with his Cockney accent, said exactly what Eric Cantona said, they said he's an idiot. So once you have these preconditioned ideas of people being better than others, superior than others, more intelligent than others, sexier than others, and they stick, it's hard now to recondition our mode of thought. And for 300 years of indoctrination of talking about black people in terms of their mental abilities, their capabilities, their intellectual and moral capacity, and women in terms of their ability to do certain things, and homosexuals. In the last 20, 30 years, when we're now trying to redress that balance and say, right, we're all equal now, the solution or the answer is not just when people say, well, why? Because it's what we've been shown and learned for 300 years. Well, because we're all equal, because we're all created the same. We've had 300 years of scientific proof, which was a lie, and all kinds of indoctrination. The last 20, 30 years is not as simple as just to say, well, everything you've learned subliminally as well for the last 300 years, just put that to the side.
And what can be done? Like, what should be done?
Only through education can we learn it, and it depends on what kind of education. So, when I talk about Black History Month, for example, Black History Month, Black History Month is a bit ridiculous as far as I'm concerned. But anyway, Black History Month should not be for Black people. If you really want to make a difference, it should be for white people to see what Black people have accomplished. Because I don't need Black History Month for me to feel as worthy as anybody else. So when you have things like that, and when we have history, the history we have learned has been a lie. They have been events. The interpretation of history is what we've learned.
Yeah, we might come back to Churchill on this again.
Well, if you want to come back to Churchill, you want to go back to the Magna Carta, you want to go back to the Battle of Waterloo, where the Prussians won and not the British. But even if you look at, for example, Dunkirk, the film, and if you just think about it, we won the World War because of Winston Churchill. No. And someone says, no, it's the Enigma Code. Well, the Enigma Code was by 3 Polish mathematicians who gave it to the British. But they don't get any glory. We get the glory. That's why we have won the war. Now, if you look at Dunkirk, which strikes me as very strange, the Battle of the Dunkirk was, I think, in 1941. And the last scene we saw was the Allies with their tail between their legs being pushed off by the Germans, off France, back to Britain. The next thing we know is we won the war. How did that happen? How can we win the war? Having tail between our legs, we've been pushed off. How did we win the war? Well, maybe the Russians came in and they had to go and fight the Russians in America and join them. But we don't know that. We won the war. So, who discovered the source of the Nile? There was a black man who put Livingston or whoever on his Morton or whoever on his shoulders, showed him where the source of the Nile was, but we discovered the source of the Nile.
And we come back into media again then, I think, because if you imagine any Secretary of State for Education in the UK saying, I'm going to change the how Churchill is taught in schools or whatever, the reaction from the elements of the media that they obey and are kind of beholden to.
Look, we don't have to be
extreme.
Yeah, but we don't have to. Of course, Winston Churchill is a great man. Don't get me wrong, and they have lots of great leaders in the past. I mean, Gordon of the cartoon, Gordon, who obviously couldn't have been that good of a leader, seeing that's how all his men got killed, and as did he by these screaming dervishes who were just completely savages with swords. I don't know how they beat the Great British Army unless they were more organised and they were more civilised than people thought. But anyway, this is the perception we have of them. So we don't have to necessarily rewrite that, but we have to be more balanced. More balanced in our views in terms of telling the truth about certain things. Like now, look at the Indian population we now have in Britain. Now, if you want to talk about the Amritsar massacre or the Mau Mau's in Kenya, or you really want to be more balanced rather than just saying it was the Germans who were committing the atrocities. And on the Allies front who committed the atrocities, when they went into Germany, raping and pillaging, it wasn't the British. It was the French who were our allies, and it was also the Russians, but we didn't do that. So to then be more balanced because what that will then do is for those 2 men who want to racially abuse Raheem Sterling because his group of people are intellectually and morally superior to his, he will then think, well, we weren't better than anybody else. We were not better than anybody else. We also, like anybody else, we were good, we were bad, rather than just thinking everything we've done is good and everything everyone else has done is bad. That would also help us, I'm talking about white British society, if you like, to then look at other people differently and see what they actually do. And that is why, from football is such a fantastic leveler, or sport, because the perception that I have of, and I travel a lot in the last couple of years, and I've been to Pakistan, India, and of course we have a perception of people who, they've got their stuff on their head and they look, and because of what society has shown us. And then as you're walking and you feel a bit uncomfortable, one of them will come up to me and he'll go, what a game last night when Liverpool beat Manchester United. And all of a sudden I feel empathy with him because we are exactly the same. But why would I not feel that anyway? Why would I have a perception of him until he comes up to me and says that, based on what I've been wrongly told about him? But why I say that it affects us all, black people, white people, that this idea of superiority and inferiority is not just white people, black people, or men, and it affects us all in the same way. Because one of the greatest freedom fighters, forget Winston Churchill, is Mahatma Gandhi. And while Mahatma Gandhi was fighting for equality amongst his own people, You listen to what he speaks about blacks in South Africa. He calls them savages, how uncouth they were, that they're not fit to lead. And because this is what he learned. He's brought up in the Temple in London. He's a lawyer. That's what he learned. So as much as he's fighting for equality, he then looks down upon black people. He was one of the biggest racists compared in terms of his perception of black people. But what he did was because he, as an Indian, feels as worthy as any white lawyer or white person. Therefore, anybody like him, meaning all the Indians, can be equally as worthy. And we see it in Africa with a lot of the African leaders who my dad went to Sandhurst with, who then went back to Africa to head up the Nigerian government, the Nigerian army, the Ghanaian army. A lot of them, and you look at the hierarchy now in Africa, and why because a lot of them are educated at Oxford and go to university, and from a business perspective, law degrees, they feel as equal to any of their white counterparts. But how do they view people who look like them in the streets of Africa? They don't view them the same because they've also been told that they are inferior. So while they know, well, it's not me because I went to Oxford, I'm educated, but how do they view people like them? They don't have the same respect for them as they do for white people in the same class because of what they've been told about those people. So it's not just a white and a black thing.
It's a class analysis, really, isn't it?
Absolutely. But of course, it then goes into, and that's why I use football as an example. So when a lot of these African countries, not so much now, but in the past, and even now, are going to appoint managers, there are a lot of white European managers. Yeah, in Africa, lots of white European managers. So fine. So while as an administrator of the Nigerian, Ghanaian, whatever FA, I know that I am equal to the English FA man. I know I'm going to appoint a white coach because I feel that he's better than the black coaches.
Yeah.
Why is that? While they have complete faith in themselves as individuals, because I've been as educated as him and I've gone the same degree as him, why can't I look at people who look like me because of the way I have been conditioned to think also? And this is what life has also shown me. And even if they do appoint, and it's interesting because sometimes some countries will appoint local black coaches, they don't pay them the same money.
Yeah.
They want to have more influence. They have more hands-on because they don't have the same respect for them as they do for the white coaches. So it's not a question of people thinking that, it's disgraceful the way white people are treated black people or even slavery. What we have to get away from is this idea that white people came with boats and enslaved Africans. Because I'm from Jamaica. I'm sure my family, my forefathers were from Ghana. The Ashanti tribe and Jamaicans are quite close, West Africa. And we were sold into slavery by kings and governments. This also helps to defeat the idea of when you want to empower a group of people, you have to show that they were as powerful, as authoritative, as organized. So this whole idea of black people running around in Africa and then they were enslaved. The whites had to come and wait on the shore and deal and barter with governments and kingdoms and organizations who sold black people to slavery. So if people understood that, they will then have a different idea of Africa. They'll say that Africans were organized. They had armies, they had governments, they had kingdoms, which would give them a better idea rather than thinking that Africa was just great because Africans were just disorganized and running around clueless. Similarly, which I put in the book, which is so interesting because I'm not political at all. I'm not political at all, but we're talking about the dynamic of the perception we have of ourselves and of other people. When you look at what goes on, and I've been to Israel and Palestine, I went to Gaza with the UN, and you talk about something as simple as a prisoner exchange. Now, when the Palestinians captured one Jewish Israeli soldier, not the general, not the colonel, not an army officer, the lowest of the low soldier. The Jewish army, the Israeli army, they will want that man back, and they're willing to give up 150. It's a negotiation of the Palestinians would say freedom fighters, the Israelis would say terrorists, and that's how the negotiations work. One of us for 100 of you. Now, what does that say to that private soldier? How empowered does that make him feel? He's not an important man in the Jewish in Israel in terms of being a general or anything like that. That says to him, I am important. Now, as much as from the Palestinian point of view, we're happy to get back 100 of our brothers, what is that saying to them in terms of the worth that they feel in relation to one Israeli? And as much as they can say, yes, we're happy to get 100 back and we're fooling them. But if Israel said, no, you can have 10, they said, no, because that one is worth more than our 10. Subliminally, psychologically, what does that tell you about your worth as a person? Similarly, when we look around and see the devastation in Africa, when you have hundreds and thousands of dying, starving kids, All you need is 10 blonde-haired, blue-eyed kids, and the empathy we'll feel towards them will be much stronger than to those. Because, of course, we believe that they are worth more than them. And this has been going on for years, and this is what we have to challenge.
And how does it? But how does it change? Because like you look at a country like Ireland now, which is becoming multicultural. Eventually, like it's been a slow process here, and because of the economic kind of boom, there was more immigration, and things are changing. But with that, there is coming more racism and more incidents, that are racist. And how does a society like Ireland, say, then deal with that? And what is the solution? Because you say like...
Well, look, in America, in 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, you had Anglo-Saxons, you probably had Germans and English who were white. The Italians weren't white. The Irish weren't white.
Yeah.
Obviously, the blacks weren't white, but then all of a sudden they became white. So the Irish now are white in America, and they have been for 20, 30 years, but they weren't before. So they have been elevated out of Irishness. The Italians have been elevated out of Irishness. Yeah. There are certain blacks, like Obama and Beyonce, who are elevated out of blackness. Yeah. We have to change the perception of who we think. Look, we're living in an environment, in a society now, as you say, is multicultural. Yeah. So what is that? What does it look like? So as much as multicultural, you can look at well, that's why I'm glad that the Prime Minister is half Hindu. His dad's from Valdeka. So, but he has been elevated out of Hinduism, if you like, because now he's Irish. So it depends on how you view who belongs. Yeah. Because once upon a time, Ireland's a bit different. But in America, they were all immigrants. Certain people are becoming more worthy than others. And now you know who the worthy ones are. The Mexicans are now not worthy, and the Latin Americans, the blacks, still aren't. I can't speak for Ireland because I don't know enough about Ireland to know the dynamic of, but I know in England, the whole idea of, first of all, the whole idea of the European Union, from the 70s was about croissants in the Champs-Élysées, pasta in Rome, sausages in Germany. That's the European Union. Not these stands. Kazakhstan and all these stands who are part of Europe now, and all of these immigrants coming in. Because a program the other day, and I was glad Boris Becker actually said it, and he didn't say it in the way that people may have interpreted it, because he was speaking about, after, and they said, well, have you felt the backlash from, Brexit? And in terms of, nobody said, no, because I'm a good immigrant. And they said, but he said, no. What I'm trying to say is that because I'm German, I'm blonde hair and blue eyed. So Brexit is not about me. Yeah. It's about some Eastern European. It's about one of those stands who may become part of Europe. Yeah. And that's what it boils down to. So it depends on who you now view to be worthy or not. So Brexit is not against the Italians and the French and people like that, as much as politically it then will be, but that is not why people are concerned. That the immigration is not about Boris Johnson, Freudian slip, Boris Becker coming over. Yeah. So I can't speak for Ireland in terms of that, but I know that in terms of what happens in England, that is a big problem. So what I have an issue with, I look at it two ways. I think that we have a responsibility because we created this problem. We created the problem in Syria, in Jordan, all over the Middle East, from the 1920s, Sykes-Picot, whereby we separated and put people in power, and then all of a sudden put people in power, took them out. We put Saddam Hussein in power. All of a sudden we didn't need him anymore. So all of that now, the situation, same with Gaddafi. But anyway, so we have created this problem. Secondly, from a European point of view, when we wanted to bring down socialism, get rid of the USSR, we said to all of these Eastern European countries, you become a democracy, you become one of us. And when they did, it's going to take 20, 30, even 40 years before, from a financial point of view, they are able, to stand on their own 2 feet or to become. So until that happens, we may have to give them more than we actually getting in, or give them more money and help them out. And I wouldn't want to do that anymore, but we created that problem. If we didn't say to these Eastern European countries, you can become one of us, Poland and Lithuania and all these countries, then it would have been fine. So I believe we have a responsibility. We have a responsibility, and that is why I have much more respect for our European leaders, because our European leaders, Macron and Merkel, they know if they have a referendum, the German people and the French people would vote to leave. Yeah. They would vote to leave. Yeah. But they know it's the wrong thing to do, so they won't give them that. We have a representative democracy whereby we put you in charge to make the decisions. Don't ask us. Yeah. Don't ask us.
I want to ask you about that, because in 2011 you said that there was a new British culture. Those from 10 to 25 now identify with each other, whether black, white, Indian, Chinese, And you said we were going through a transitional period. And maybe at that time, if you look, then the Olympics came the year later to London, and it looked like that the country was changing, that things were optimistic. I wonder what you think of how much damage has been caused by, forget about whether Brexit was right or wrong, but the forces that were unleashed. Like I've seen you on Question Time.
The forces that were unleashed has nothing to do with the under-30s. So those people still feel exactly the same way.
But they didn't vote for it.
They didn't vote for it. So we know who voted for it. The people who remember the good old days, the empire days, the people
myths.
And that is why no one thought it would work. No one thought that they would vote to leave because no one was saying it. Because if you ask people, no one would admit to it because they'd be accused of being racially biased and being against immigration. So everyone said, not a word. So that's why when they did all the polls, they won't win because people voted. Then when they won, all of a sudden now they've become emboldened and legitimized to then come out like America. No thought Donald Trump would win because they kept quiet because they knew the real reason why they were voting. They'd never admit it. They'd never admit it. And if you look at, I've got 2 kids in the NHS, 2 doctors, and the NHS can't function without the foreign workers. So the whole idea of 350 million to the NHS, fine, it was one on immigration. It was one on immigration. But people are afraid to say that because then you're going to accuse them of being racially biased. I'm racially biased. I can't help it. That's why I've been brought up. I'm happy to say it. But they're afraid to say it, so they say no. So we gave them an excuse. Because it's not immigration. I speak to some of my friends who voted leave, and I know them and I know why they voted. But they said, no, it's not because of that. And they needed an excuse, but they didn't have one. And then they quickly got one. Sovereignty. Sovereignty. Because we want the right to make our own decisions. I'm going, what decisions? When we get sovereignty, do you even know what decisions will be taken so far above your head you haven't got a clue by all English people or all British people? So this idea of us making our own decisions, we don't know what decisions we're making behind closed doors. We don't even know who's making the decisions. But that's a nice get-out clause for them to then say, it's not immigration, it's sovereignty. We don't want anyone in Brussels making up. But you have 90-odd British MPs who represent our whatever we want, our interests in there. We have more MEPs than, apart from Germany, we've got, and France, we've probably got the same more than any. So they're representing our interests. So it's not as if we don't have any representation. And in terms of, but the whole idea of us now being better off, because of course what they will then do is say, we want to make our own trade deals. I said, do you know about the opium wars in China? That's the trade deals we made, whereby we could go and force someone to buy opium because we have bigger guns than them. That's the old trade deals. That's how we used to trade in the old days. No, because they need to trade with us. Why do they need to trade with us? And obviously, from an intellectual point of view, I don't even understand it. And when people say, you're calling us thick, I say, I'm calling myself thick. I don't understand the ramification leaving Europe. None of us do. So why, if you then say we don't understand it, am I accusing anyone of being stupid? I said I must be accusing myself because I don't understand it either. So this whole idea of, we knew what we were doing and how can we?
Well, I think the stupid thing was the question, not the answer people gave. The question was so stupid because they made it wasn't simple, it was simplistic to ask remain or leave.
I don't want to, it's not and I do think it's as simple as this. 350 to the NHS, stop immigration, we're going to vote. Build a wall in Mexico, Trump's going to get in. Forget anything else.
And you think and it's all motivated by the same forces?
Absolutely, but it's understandable because our plight and our unhappiness is because of the immigrants, isn't it? This is what we have been told. Because, of course, a mother and her child, of course they want to get on a boat and take their lives in their hands to come across the Mediterranean, whereby they can be killed, they can be sold as slaves, to come to England to get a council house and to get benefits. Of course they want to do that. Of course, a doctor in Syria, who is a doctor, who's got a PhD, wants to get on a boat with his family with just a handbag and just a bag with clothes in it to come to England to work as a porter. Of course he wants to do that. Because England is, of course, why does he want to stay in Syria and be a doctor? This is what people have been told, that people want to come here to go on the dole and to get benefits. And I know people, I've watched documentaries on people who were intellectuals, who were engineers, who were scientists, who were doctors, who've left everything behind because they want to come and live in a council house in England and work as a kitchen porter. That's what we've been feeding them.
And people keep feeding them, and that's the tragedy of Brexit, if you like, that's become.
But it's understandable because this is what these people do. This is what we've been told. This is what we've been told.
Yeah.
But if anything happens in America and they're going to be blonde hair and blue-eyed, we'd be going over there to help them to bring them over here.
And it's nationalism everywhere. And it's national. Like Ireland has its own problems with nationalism.
But people, you see, because there are not enough people who remember how bad things were in the 30s and 40s, what nationalism actually did.
Yeah.
And the idea that somebody arbitrarily can decide to do something. And that is why the whole reason NATO, the whole reason UN started, was that no country should be able to then say, I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
And that is what, when you look at Gavin Williamson, for example, who talked about the lethality of Britain when he was still in power. And the lethality of Britain meant that if they decided, and of course, because it's Britain, we're going to do it for the right reasons, altruistic, we're going to go and help, and it's for the benefactors of the world, regardless of all that, we could arbitrarily decide that we wanted to go in as a country from a army perspective into somebody else's country without any recompense, without anybody stopping us. That is what he said the Brexit will give us. But of course, that's not an issue to us because we know we're going to be doing it for the right reasons. Now, if China or North Korea said, well, we don't want to be part of a group because we want to decide arbitrarily to go and do, no, because you're going to do it because you're bad.
Yeah.
And people can't imagine, I can't remember, and this has happened for hundreds and thousands of years, whereby independent, arbitrarily, countries can decide to do something in the name of whatever they want to call it, and it caused so many problems.
When you played for England, what did you feel about the kind of nationalistic, not even the racist side of it, but just the nationalistic, jingoistic element that attached to playing for England?
I played for England because that is who my teammates were. I could have played for Northern Ireland, Scotland or Wales, and I would have tried as hard for Northern Ireland, Scotland or Wales. Over here, you should know that, because of course with those, obviously, strong Irish boys you have there in Aldridge and Cascarino and McAteer, and they give 100% for Ireland, you can understand why the identity is all about. The identity is who your teammates happen to be.
Yeah.
And I use, from a footballing perspective, Stuart Pearce as an example all the time, because Stuart Pearce is the quintessential English man, British Bulldog spirit, run through a brick wall for England, 69 caps I think he has for England. If, we don't know how, that Stuart Pearce had 68 caps for England, and his 69th cap, not for England, but his 69th cap, would have been his first cap for France against England, he would have given 100%. 100%, because then his family would be France, and that is who he would play for. And that is who he would give 100% for. That's who he would, he's not going to die for them, but that's who he would run through a brick wall for, because his professionalism meant that this is now who I'm going to play for. So I can't say I would try harder for England than I did for Northern Ireland, for playing for Northern Ireland as I could have, or Scotland or Wales. So this whole idea of nationalism, and I suppose before we lived in this multicultural society we didn't, this globalization whereby now, what is British, what is English, what is Irish? It is even more understandable for us to have this nationalistic fervour, because we're all the same. Okay, now Barnes is from Jamaica, but apart from that, we're all from England, so we're going to... Whereas in this day and age, whereby what is an Englishman, what is an Irishman, we can be nationalistic, but why can't the Sikh now be part of our nation?
Or be more than one thing. Be more than one thing is probably the key, isn't it?
Well,
you don't have to be one thing.
Clarence Seedorf says that he's a citizen of the world. I think he's tongue-in-cheek when he says it, because he lives in Italy, he's from Holland and whatever. So, you know, wherever you happen to be, as you say, and what is that one thing?
Yeah.
Even if you are one thing, what is that?
Yeah. But you had some experiences when you played for England. Like I'm thinking of the flight in South America.
Yeah.
It's 35 years ago next month since the goal against Brazil in the Maracanã. But that flight, maybe tell people about that when you were...
Well, we had a couple of members who were funded by the National Front, 3 of them who were on the plane with us, because of course back then England didn't fly in their own plane. We didn't even all go business class. We're in economy, and of course they were at the back of the plane handing the National Front flags up. When we got to Brazil, the old boy who used to dress up as the Beefeater, who followed England everywhere, they stood beside him with his national... I mean, he's old, he doesn't know what's going on really, and the Brazilian press just felt, well, the English fans are here. So there he is, they're there with the National Front. They don't know what it means, so they're taking pictures. They're in our hotel. No one batted an eyelid. I didn't bat an eyelid. It was like, well, you know, you couldn't stop them. And no one said, oh, this is terrible, this is disgraceful. It was probably on page 14, you know. And all the reporters who are around now championing this cause of discrimination and how terrible it is and people should be castigated and, you know, hung, drawn and quartered. they were 30, 40-year-old men then. So if it was wrong now, why wasn't it wrong then? It's just that it was accepted then, and now that the wolves are circling, and you've got to be seen to be saying how terrible it is, so many people are now coming out and saying, oh, it's terrible, it's disgusting, you know. So why weren't they saying that back then?
When you say people are hung, drawn and quartered, like what is the alternative in certain circumstances? Like say the Raheem Sterling, the guys at Stamford Bridge, like the media find them and they're banned from Chelsea. And I get your point that like it doesn't fix anything to ban them because they're still going to carry those racist views wherever they go.
Yeah.
But what happens if you don't ban them?
Well, no, I'm not saying you shouldn't ban them.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you shouldn't ban them. If you ban them, you ban them. But that is not that's not the focus.
Okay.
Because if you ban them, the other racially biased people will just keep their mouth shut. But then, when they keep their mouth shut, so therefore there's no racism in football, which is what we thought for the last 25 years, when he is working in his shop and a black man comes in, he's going to watch him to make sure he doesn't steal something. When he then has to interview people for a job and one of them is black, he's not going to get that job. Not because he's black, because I just don't get on with them. I'll get on better with the other one. When a woman is walking down the road and a black man comes towards her and she clutches her bag and crosses the road, that is more dangerous. That is more prevalent than two idiots shouting at Raheem Sterling. So do we want to just get rid of racism, or do we want not to hear it? And what I've said for the last 25 years is all we can do in football is not hear it and feel that we can do something about it. And unfortunately, 25 years later, because people have become emboldened, they've now started to then show their true feelings. So nothing has changed.
Yeah. And so when like something like Danny Baker incident happens, like what would you see as a solution in that case?
Look, I can show you on my phone. So many of my black friends are showing me images of Harry, Meghan, and Will Smith dressed as the Fresh Prince in her arms. Now, due to political correctness, we have to make a stand and say it's terrible. But let's look at the bigger picture. Okay, you give him a slap on the wrist, and for me, doing something like that, okay, you can sack Danny Baker. What's that going to change? I don't believe Danny Baker is more racially biased than anybody else. And if you had put that on his phone and put it to all his friends, rather than putting it out on Twitter in the public domain, people would have laughed and would have gone, oh, because he's not saying that it's a monkey. I'm waiting to get a tap on the shoulder. I'm waiting to get a tap on the shoulder. Because in 1987, I might as well get it out there now, because of course it was there. It was actually in the Liverpool Echo. 1987, Christmas party for Liverpool. John Barnes went as a Ku Klux Klan member.
Yeah.
Is John Barnes endorsing the Ku Klux Klan? Am I a member of the Ku Klux Klan? So when you have Prince William going to a fancy dress party with a Nazi uniform on,
Prince Harry was
Prince Harry, whoever it is he endorsing that? No, he isn't. Because a fancy dress party is there to ridicule people. So if you want to ridicule the Ku Klux Klan, you go there to make fun. So you go there, and if you want to go there, fancy dress parties to go there, something that's recognizable. So you got to go to a fancy dress party as a 12-year-old Michael Jackson in the Jackson 5. You just have to go like that. And you're going to go, who are you? I'm Michael Jackson. It's a bit of a stupid outfit you got on there. Whereas if you black your face up and put an afro on and go with 5 of your white friends who black their face up and put an afro on, you're the Jackson 5. Oh no, but you're racist because... This is where political correctness can get out of hand. So the Danny Baker situation, it's unfortunate that he tweeted it and people have to go, yes, you got to sack him because he's racist, he's racially biased. Danny, he's no more racially biased. I'm not going to say he's not racially biased because I believe we all are, but he's no more racially biased and probably less racially biased than people. Because what I say is real racists do not get caught. Why real racists don't get caught is because they're so conscious of their discrimination that they put themselves in a position not to get caught. Whereas people who are unconsciously racist, as we all are, will do things not really meaning anything by it, and they do it. So it doesn't mean that they're not racially biased, because they are, even if they don't know it. However, a situation like that, very much like the Liam Neeson situation, doesn't, and they're inconsequential. So, from a footballing perspective, when we want to invade Montenegro and ban them from Europe and put them all in prison because 2 fans racially abused Raheem Sterling or Danny Rose, and we have all over the front pages, that is inconsequential. That event is inconsequential to the plight of black people. What is more impactful is the lack of opportunity and education in inner cities. That's affecting the black community. 2 Montenegrins shouting racial abuse is not affecting the black community whatsoever.
Yeah.
So why are we making such a big deal about that in terms of coming down hard on Montenegro rather than looking what's going on in our own country, the inner cities? And that's what I'm saying to Raheem Sterling and people like that. Talk about that. Yes, when you go to Montenegro, it happens. When Danny Rose mentions, and I have sympathy with Danny Rose. Empathy, yeah. I've got sympathy as well with Danny Rose because of what he's actually been through. He's had his problems with depression and what have you. And of course, he went to Montenegro and stuff like that. But when Danny says, and I do have empathy with Danny, when Danny says about the fine that's given to Montenegro, £17,500 is a disgrace because that's how much I spend on a night out in London.
Yeah.
I don't think people will have a lot of sympathy for him. £17,500. And he's trying to make the point that it's a paltry figure. Yeah. And it may be a paltry figure, because what should it be? Should it be $1 million? Should it be 5? We don't know, but you can say it's a paltry figure. But to use that example of that's what I spent on a night out in London, so therefore it's a disgrace, doesn't really
But do you think those actions eventually affect societal change by fining, by banning people, by making it clear that there are things that are unacceptable?
If we're talking about racism being an ideology, you cannot change an ideology by passing laws. You're talking about the ideology, an ISIS ideology, and you can see what's going on there. You think that changing laws or banning people is going to change that ideology? Only through education and reconditioning those people in terms of the way they think will change anything. Because you can pass laws. So, let's ban, well, we have banned. You're not allowed monkey chants at football matches. So you're not allowed monkey chants. But when a black player gets the ball, the whole stadium can boo. You're allowed to boo. Now we know what they're doing. They're not making a monkey chant, but only when a black player gets the ball, they're going to boo. That's not racist because you're allowed to boo. We'll ban booing. We'll clap. We'll ban clapping. There's always going to be somewhere that I can make you know that I'm racially abusing you, rather than thinking, why don't I stop this person even wanting to do that by changing his perception? So, we're not allowed monkey chants, but you come to take a throw-in, and as you come to me, I scratch my armpit. Call the steward, kick him out. Why, Mr. Steward? My armpit's scratching me. And I'll always be able to come up with something else. I liken it to the offside law. When you're offside, you're offside. They changed the offside law. Now it confuses everyone. Interfering with play, second phase, third phase. What if this happened? Just keep it simple. If you're offside, you're offside. So once you then come up with a law to stop something, you can always come up with something else. Because ultimately, unless you're going to say no abuse, you're allowed to abuse, and that is the job. If you're a real football fan, you'll know this. The job is for you to support your team, but your job is also to abuse the opposition.
Right.
That's your job, to abuse the opposition. Now, how can we abuse the opposition when you're not allowed racial abuse? Okay, what about if you're from, you Scouse, so-and-so, you Cockney, whatever.
We have it with Ireland, with James McLean getting abuse now for...
So we can ban sectarian abuse. Maybe, I don't know. So you can ban sectarian abuse, but where does it then stop? Why not come up with something to stop people wanting to abuse people, rather than banning them or passing a law to stop them doing it? And that's the only way we're going to change it.
And is that the way you felt when you were, when I was saying to you earlier, one of the first football matches I ever went to was Liverpool-Everton in 87, when Liverpool won 2-0. But the game that had preceded that on the Wednesday, there had been a shocking amount of racist abuse from Everton fans towards you. And I watched the game again this week, the one, and you can hear it. And I never noticed it at the time as a kid, and then I was listening to it again, and you can hear this.
Well, I'm just wondering, had I been playing for Everton, I think I got it from Liverpool.
Yeah. What do you think?
Well, when I played for Watford, I got it from Liverpool. And when I played for Liverpool, they loved me. And if I played for Everton, what do you think? Because I've heard black Everton players get racially abused from Liverpool fans. So that's the point I'm trying to make. When people want to point the finger at somebody else and talk about it's not us, it's them, it is a part of society. And that's what we have to get rid of it in society.
And when you talk about Liam Neeson, you said on your podcast you were disappointed in how that was reported, like your comments about Liam Neeson. Like, explain that.
Yes, of course, because first of all, as soon as there's any conversation to do with race, unless you're going to come down hard on that person, you're either going to be an apologist for racism or condoning it. But I said, listen to what he's talking about. Listen to what he's talking about. He's talking about revenge. And I went to Rwanda to promote peace and reconciliation between the Hutu and the Tutsis, and I met this man, lovely man, spoke to him for half an hour. When he left, the guards would said he killed his wife in the genocide because he was a Hutu, she was a Tutsi. He was forced to do it by the army because the army had to make everybody guilty. So they got all normal people. Because you're married to Tutsis, 5 of the football team got killed by their teammates. And they said, if you don't do it, we're going to kill you and your family. So what choice do you make? Now, how can I judge that man? If I just hear about him, I'm going to think he's the worst man in the world. But having met him and seen he's normal just like me, he has a decision to make. I just thank God I don't have to make those decisions. So therefore, when things happen and you see what people do and people say, or even where people think, because of their environment, the way they've been brought up, the situation they're in, they do certain things. I'm so happy I don't even have to make those decisions. Why I'm telling you that story is because same with Liam Neeson, he's brought up in a particular part of Ireland, whereby with the whole situation that goes on in Ireland years ago, and hopefully it won't happen again after Brexit if it does happen, you do things that other people couldn't understand. So when he's talking about revenge, and I actually said, I thought, just listening, because I said, anything that Piers Morgan says, I go against anyway. So from he started saying that, I thought, let me listen to what he says. He starts off by talking about Ireland, talking about people he knew, what they went through, and then he wanted to explain a situation of revenge, and he thought to himself, I better not talk about the troubles in Ireland. I'll talk about something that I won't get in trouble about, unfortunately for him. So he spoke about that. So he then he was speaking about the devastation that the feeling of revenge or vengeance can cause in you. So forget about what I did. Talk about how it can disturb you. So the example he gave then said, and it ate me up, and I felt really bad because I wanted to kill any black person, and then a week had to go to the priest, and then all people heard was, you wanted to kill a black person? And he's going, forget about, I'm just talking about that revenge and how I felt. And he went on to say it was a Lithuanian, an Englishman, a Scotsman, he would have felt the same way. Now, because we are not brought up in that environment to know the whole dynamic between Catholics and Protestants, and it's not personal. So therefore, if you're a Protestant, if you're a Catholic, then it's not that particular Protestant, it's any Protestant, which means it's not that particular black man who may have raped his cousin or whatever, it's any black person. All they heard was that. So of course, a lot of black people are like, oh, you're a disgrace, he's sticking up for him, blah, blah, blah. And I said, okay. I said, if Liam Neeson then said happened to be a Chinese person, you as a black person wouldn't even bat an eyelid. You wouldn't even think how terrible he is. You wouldn't even think there's anything wrong with him. But when it affects us, that is why when I started up a while ago by talking to you about discrimination from a homophobic or sexist point of view, it's about the perception we have of those groups of people. And that is what we have to challenge. So when he talks about it had nothing to do with black, but when it affects us, we feel so hard done by. Now from a black perspective, you look at the laws in Jamaica and Nigeria, and you look at even in inner city London and how black people feel about homosexuals. They discriminate terribly against homosexuals. So what right do they have to feel discriminated against when people have a perception of them when they discriminate as well? Or the way they feel about women. So the point I'm making is that my challenge is to the perceptions of the disenfranchised groups of people. But as a black person, we like to then call and play and say how terrible it is, but then how do we view homosexuals?
Yeah.
So that's a big issue. So the solution is not to pass laws, because once again, the whole idea came out, which reared its ugly head again, about walking off the field, walking off the football field. And I said it 25 years ago, that's not the answer. And I'm saying it now, but we're now pushing this agenda of walking off the field. So there have been 3 instances, and I'm going to give you 3 examples here where I don't think it's a good idea, although I'm not judging them. I'm just making an observation. The first one was a game in Warrington, a complete non-league game, Warrington, whereby the manager heard the linesman say something derogatory to one of his players, which he deemed to be racially biased, so he took his team off the field. That's the first instance. He got fined for walking off the field, and I think someone from Kick It Out or someone paid his fine because he was standing up for racism. Second one was another game whereby the goalkeeper was being racially abused by people behind him in the stand, and they walked off the field. Coincidentally, they were both losing 3-0 at the time. Right. If they were winning 3-0 and they walked off the field, I would have patted them on the back and said, well done. I'm not accusing them of anything. But I'm sure the goalkeeper would have been racially abused when it was 0-0. When it was 1-0 as well. So why did they wait till 3-0 to walk off the field? Are they really making a stand against racism? Now you're going to leave that open to interpretation, leave it on to abuse. So you can't arbitrarily then say to either a black person, a black player, if you feel you're being racially abused, you walk off the field. Because I can then decide, I heard something in the crowd. Who did it? I don't know, but I heard it. And I'm walking off. You're going to walk off behind me. There's going to be chaos. There's going to be chaos. So I'm not a fan of that whatsoever.
But there will be instances where it's like it's happening and the game mightn't be in that situation and players will walk off then.
So if I'll say Liverpool then rather than accusing anybody else. So if a Liverpool fan wants to go to Everton versus Chelsea and he wants to put on a blue scarf and racial abuse so that his team gets kicked out and docked 3 points, what happens then? Just like the offside law. There's always ways of getting around it and creating something whereby you can get your team docked points. And is it really a Liverpool fan? And secondly, and this for me is the most overriding thing, a football club is not responsible for the actions of adults. A football club is responsible for its reaction to what they do.
Yeah.
But if a football fan wants to go into a football stadium and shout racist abuse, that football club is not responsible for that adult, for that human being. And he shouldn't be allowed. So therefore, they're responsible as to whether they ban him, kick him out of the stadium or whatever. But they can't stop him doing that. And by docking them points or finding them, it doesn't mean, and as I said, it can open up another avenue whereby people can go and get points docked. And then some will do it, some won't do it. So then if we do it and we lose 3 points, but you know it happens there and they don't do it, what then happens?
What do you make of an instance like after the Suarez Evra situation where Liverpool fans were booing Evra, and now they're booing him because he's involved in that incident, but he's a black player who's made an allegation of racism, so effectively they're booing him because he's black.
So what might that do? Get on with it.
Right.
Get on with it. Life isn't fair. Look, we're selling this dream of equality to everyone. And particularly with our children. And then when all of a sudden they're not children anymore, they're in the big bad world, and they go, well, what about the discrimination that? And forget about racial discrimination. I'm talking about life is hard. People are discriminated against. You've got to be tough. You've got to be tough. So in a situation like them booing him, so what are you going to do? Ban booing. But you can't ban booing, can you?
But is it education again?
Make them not want to boo.
Yeah. You're writing a book about this, are you? And
it's called The Uncomfortable Truth
of
Racism. And the uncomfortable truth is that we are all unconsciously biased. That's what I'm going to say. I don't want to, because if I say you're all unconsciously racist, people get all upset. Because I say something as simple as you'll never call anybody the N-word or whatever. But if you just had a choice, and this is where it boils down to. A lot of people will look at me, and so many people say to me, managers and friends of mine, not friends of mine, but people who you first meet, and they go, I don't see you as being black. And they think they're paying me a compliment. So first of all, I think, well, if you don't see me as being black, what do you see me as being? And in their own mind, they will think normal. And then I'll say, is black not normal?
Yeah.
So that's the first thing.
Yeah.
So they get a little bit standoffish because they realize what they're saying. Because they don't even think about what they're saying. And then secondly, I'll think, well, what is your impression of black that I'm not? Because I don't smoke marijuana and have dreadlocks. So what I always say is you don't have to change your perception of a black person, of a black individual. You have to change your perception of what black is. Because what we do is we elevate, I don't want to call superior black people, but we elevate celebrity black people out of blackness. So Obama, Beyonce, John Barnes, Rio Ferdinand, musicians, Idris Elba was my favorite actor. You don't have to change your perception of them. And until you view the average black man in the street as average, that's the perception we have to change. So on the Piers Morgan show where Alex Beresford, who was the, I don't know Alex, he's a good guy, who was he's the weatherman on Piers Morgan's show, black guy. His cousin got killed, knife crime in London. And he was on the show, and then he said, I want to show you this picture of me and my brothers, not his brothers, his friends, and a positive image of black men. So he had a picture of 15 of his black friends, a positive image of positive black man, doctor, lawyer, businessman, 15 of them. And I say, that's not what you have to change, because people will change their perception of doctors, lawyers, businessmen. You show 15 black men who one's on the dole, one works in the post office, and when we see them as equal, that's when we know we've become equal. Because we can always elevate them out of blackness and see businessmen and doctors and lawyers because we don't see them as being black. We see them as being normal. So we have to stop promoting this image, and particularly from a footballing perspective, where we say the idea now what we need in football or to get rid of racism is more black managers, more black owners of football clubs, more black people in the boardroom. That's not what we need to change the perception. We need to change the perception of the average black person, because there has not been any time in history for the last 1,000 years and more whereby an elite group, from the Magna Carta to the French Revolution to the American Revolution to an elite group of people, have tried to convince the masses that you put me into a position of power and your life will get better. That has never happened. That has never happened. So the barons in the Magna Carta wanted more power from the king, say we'll help the serfs. That never happened. The French Revolution the same. So what I'm not going to do, and I've resisted it and I'm not going to do it, is when people say get involved in this organization now to get more black people in the boardroom. I said, how is that going to help the young black kid living in inner city?
Yeah.
How is that going to help him? That's not helping him. Let's talk about helping him. And when we help him to change the perception of him, you will have many more black people being then into the boardroom. Not the other way around. Not because we have been elevated out of blackness, and that's what we have to do. So many black players, black footballers are talking about we need more black. And of course, yes, we need more black coaching, black whatever. That's obvious, and it's been going on for years. But until we change the perception of the average black man, nothing will change. They'll always have the odd one who will be elevated out of blackness to become a black manager. But until we change the perception, what will then happen is, like myself, I say as a black coach, and I would never say I can be as good as anybody else, because that's arrogant. What I say as a black coach is I can be as bad as anybody else. What I mean by that is that I can be a bad manager, lose my job, and get another job. Lose my job and get another job, like the white managers. But as a black manager, you lose your job, you don't get another job.
And that's what you think happened?
That's what. Not just look at how many black managers have lost their jobs and been given other jobs, and how many white managers have lost their jobs and been given jobs. And it's not because. So it's the perception. So, and what I say is that football is the least racist industry, and why I say that is because if you're a black manager or a black player, let's talk about black managers. If I go to any football club, Montenegro, where people may say they're most racist, and I'm successful, they will love me. I score a hat-trick for the team, they will love me. Those two Chelsea fans against Raheem Sterling, what did they do with Didier Drogba? And if Raheem Sterling played for them, they will love you. That is how all-encompassing football is when you have a love for your club. That it doesn't matter how racially biased you are. If he plays well, you're going to love him. Now, if he plays badly, that is when your perceptions of black people's ability comes in, or a black man's ability to lead as a manager comes in. That is when you'll be quicker to come down hard on him than you would with a white manager. But if he's successful, you will love him.
Is this where you see your life going now? This area, like writing a book about this? Because you say you're not political, but I listen to you and I think this is...
Well, the thing about it is that why you're not political? Political is about changing laws and putting laws in place, like the Rooney Rule. And what I say is, you know what? We're talking about Rooney Rule. And the problem with the Rooney Rule is that if I'm Roman Abramovich, and I'm not saying anything, I'm not Roman Abramovich. I am a Chinese multi-billionaire who's now bought Swindon Town. This is my club. I've made this club. You're going to force me to give a black man an interview? And I own this company. It's all my money? Okay, I will. Come for the interview. Yeah. Fine, you haven't got the job. I passed because I ticked the box. I gave him an interview rather than changing my perception. So that's not going to help anything. Apart from convince people that we're becoming more equal because we're now forcing people to be given interviews. Fine. I say we should have a Rooney Rule for life. Not for football. Rooney Rule for life. So that if you work in a corner shop, if you're a milkman or whatever, you have to give a black person an opportunity. That's more important. So when people talk about a Rooney Rule making a difference, and if they really believe a Rooney Rule will make a difference, why don't they introduce it into mainstream society? Rather than just looking at football, because what we assume is football's fault. There's not a problem with society, it's just football. Oh, but it's also the police. Oh, it's also Harvey Weinstein. And it's also those two. So the point I'm making is that it is a problem we have in society, which has to be changed only through education. So politics is about making laws, and you have to have that.
But society, I'm not involved in that. Society, which is what informs politics ultimately. Like politics is just, it's lower down the scale really than making societal change.
Exactly. But however, that's what I'm saying. Before you are a racially biased football fan, you're a racially biased member of society, and there are many more of them than they are who actually A, get caught, or B, for example, Sky poll. 90% of people have heard racist abuse at football matches. 87% of people have said there's no point reporting it because nothing's going to be done. 98% of people are appalled by it, goes on, blah, blah, blah. And I say to them, ask another question. What percentage of people have actually done it? Come on, people.
Yeah.
Not me. No percent. So for no percent of people who've done it, how come 97% of people have heard it? So who's doing it? Because we won't admit it.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. We're also, no, oh, sorry. Those two people at Chelsea, they're the ones. They go to every single ground every week and they racially abuse people because it's all over. Every ground is happening, but no one's doing it. And in the workplace, it's just Harvey Weinstein, isn't it? Who sexually abused women. So, why I don't like it from an elitist point of view is that we're getting away from the crux of the matter where it happens low down. And I don't want to talk about low and high, but let's just talk about it from the inner cities and the working classes and the people who don't have an influence and people who don't have a voice. The Me Too movement, Tarana Burke, black woman, 2006 starts the Me Too movement to talk about the sexual abuse that young black girls in the inner cities are going through. 2006. No one's interested. 2014, famous Hollywood actress talks about Me Too movement. That's what the Me Too movement is now, about a famous multimillionaire Hollywood actresses and other Hollywood actresses who've been sexually abused by Harvey Weinstein and other people. That has been commandeered by an elite group to serve their own end. Taking a knee, Colin Kaepernick in American football, talking about the discrimination and the fact that young black kids in inner cities are being shot and killed. That's what that's about. Not anymore. Everyone now wants to take a knee. And now it's about a multimillionaire American footballer's right to take a knee. And everybody's behind him. He has a right to take a knee. What's he taking a knee for? We don't know. But he has a right to take a knee because he's showing that he has a right. The whole original message of doing something about what's happening down there is now lost. No one cares about that. So, Raheem Sterling, Danny Rose in Montenegro. That's the problem. And when Raheem talks about, he's talking about football, because that's the business he's in. That's what he's in. So he's talking about discrimination in football. You have a voice now that people have to listen to. You come from an area in Wembley called Stonebridge Park where I used to play, and you see the lack of opportunities for kids in Stonebridge Park, lack of education, they've got no hope. Talk about that. So he has done really well. So he's done really well because he's given them bought 100 of them tickets to go to the game. How is that going to help them in the future? What's going to help them in the future? If you get those 100 kids, put them in front of a press conference saying, these kids are being disenfranchised and being discriminated against, they're not going to get education, social, housing, there's nothing happening in this area. That's what we should be talking about.
But isn't Sterling not started something by like broadening it out from just the people who racially abuse him and bringing in the media element into it?
Yes, but what I wanted him to do is to bring the media element to it, as I said, about the blonde hair, blue eyed terror, the media influence on our perceptions in society. But he said on young black footballers. So therefore, Phil Foden against a black player who bought his mum a house for $2 million. So he's saying that they influence the perception of young black millionaire footballers. Yeah, that's fine. Yes, then the media now has a responsibility, but it absolves the media of a position to then look at themselves generally in society, because all we're now saying is that, so it's Harvey Weinstein, it's Luis Suarez, it's John Terry, it's those two racist fans, and now it's the sports media, because that's what was said. The sports media in terms of the reporting on black footballers. But he should have winded to talk about the media generally in terms of the perception that the influence that they have in people's perceptions on black people generally, not black footballers or millionaire footballers.
You talked about your father a lot. Are you a strict father? Were you a strict father?
I am a very strict father.
Really?
I'm a very strict father.
7 kids?
7 kids. My first 2. And my biggest thing for me, and both my boys love playing football. One's 35, he's a plastic surgeon. He's a consultant. My other son's a banker. He got a first in maths at Leeds University. My other daughter's a doctor. She's obviously a surgeon. My other daughter's an estate agent. And I've got 4 little ones. Yeah. Because when I was growing up with my children, I just insisted, like my dad did with me, as much as I turned against it, and my sisters were very good academically, but I fought against that, was an education. That's all I insisted on my children, an education. And I was fortunate enough to be able to send them to a good school to get that education. Yeah. So, and I'm very strict with them. That's why, and because I got to the stage, and as much as I was naughty when I was growing up, my sisters were like angels. I was naughty because, I used to run around and do things. I believe that you have to be strict with them when they're young. So with my children, from they got to 11 and 12 years old, they were fine. Because I brought them up at the age between 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Because if you're waiting to 12 to be strict with your kids, it's too late. My sons will beat me up. They're 13, they're big. So that's my greatest achievement, my children, in terms of the people they have become. They're humble, completely humble. They hate. My son works for Standard Chartered as a banker, and Liverpool are sponsored by them. No one there knows I'm his dad. He would never tell people that I'm his dad.
Yeah.
He's made it on his own, and he hates the idea of people then, going, oh, John Barnes did that. So they're just humble. In fact, with my daughters, I remember going to these concerts, and when they see people, and what I like about my children is that they still get excited when they meet celebrities. They don't see me as that at all. But when they meet people, they're like normal people, and there's so-and-so, and there's so-and-so, and I'm going, well, what about me? Because I don't know. But even their friends just treat me as, because I've always been just dad. Even with their friends, I've just been Gemma's dad, Jazzy's dad, my sons now, because I've always separated the two aspects of my life. The most important aspect is who you are, and secondly, what you are. Who I am is John Barnes, husband, father, friend, enemy, normal person. What I am is John Barnes, celebrity, footballer, whatever you want to call me. And they never cross. So therefore, if I'm on the underground, if I'm going to get a train, if I have to go to queue up to go into a bar, if I've got to do whatever, I'm a normal person. Now, when I'm John Barnes, what I am, then maybe if I'm in my professional life, but they've never crossed over. And I've been so fortunate that because they've never crossed over, when there are times when, I have to queue up to get into a restaurant, or I can't get a ticket to go to Liverpool or whatever, I just go, well, that happens to normal people. This is the way the world is. Yeah. Whereas what happens with a lot of people is when they confuse who they are with what they are, is when what they are not anymore, meaning that people say to me, which is a bit of a Freudian slip, and I just go, that's showbiz. People look at me and they go, half recognize me, and they go, you used to be John Barnes. And I go, you're right there. You're right there. And now I'm just John Barnes. So when things like that happen, I don't feel upset at all.
Yeah.
And that's what happens with a lot of celebrities who all of a sudden haven't got the limelight anymore. People don't want to know them. You look at Frank. When Frank Bruno, when Harry and everybody loved Frank, then then Lennox Lewis came along, no one wanted to know Frank. He couldn't handle it because it was like, I thought everybody loved me. So that has never, and it never will happen to me, because I saw as a 17-year-old footballer when ex-players used to come back, and I saw the response that the fans or people around the club had when these old players came back. What are these old boys coming back here for, trying to get tickets and trying to be involved? Oh, they're just a bit of a pain. And I said to myself, you know what? That could be me. And if it's me, that's life. So I've always separated who I am and what I am. And now who I am is father, husband, friend, normal person. And I'm very comfortable with that.
And what did your father think of the life you created outside football and the way you managed it all?
I think that is where, and he always said to me that is the most pride he feels in me, the way that I handle the hype, the unrealistic nature of football. Because he said you don't have any celebrity friends, and you don't go to these celebrity parties and Hollywood, and people always say to me, who's the most famous person in your phone? And I'm sorry, Jamie, I always mention you, because Jamie Redknapp is a friend of mine, so I always go Jamie and feel very proud, because I would never just mix with someone or even want to be somebody's friend because of who they are, and I feel embarrassed by doing that. So my dad always said that, he's so proud of me, because obviously, my dad passed away about 10 years ago, and I was still, I had retired, but even when I was actually playing, because all my friends are the friends I went to school with. My friends I went to school with, and when I'm young and growing up, I don't have any celebrity friends, and he always just felt that, because that's the way we were. Maybe it's a Jamaican thing. Because when I coached the Jamaican national team for a year, we used to train in the national stadium. And when we trained in the national stadium, Usain Bolt would train on the track while we were training the national team. So the national team's training, Usain is training on the track, but anybody could come and run around the track. And people come and run on the track, and it wouldn't be, oh, Usain. Because in Jamaica, we don't have this culture of, oh, you're a celebrity, you're a superstar. You're like anybody else. So we appreciate what you do, because, and even my family, because my mother's uncle used to manage Marvin Gaye. So Marvin Gaye came to my house, played football with me in the garden, never had a picture or anything. And now I tell people, they're like, Marvin Gaye, Bob Marley, my mother knows Bob Marley, Mike. So there's not this celebrity culture in Jamaica. So therefore, we don't see people. Tell me about your uncle managing
Marvin Gaye.
They lived in America. And Stephen Hill, Dr. Stephen Hill.
Right, okay.
And he was we would call him a white Jamaican.
Right.
Because, of course, in Jamaica, look at me, but they had straight hair and they were light-skinned, because, of course, Jamaica, you got white Jamaicans, black Jamaicans, and, so they were white middle-class Jamaicans. They moved up to America, got into the music business, and he was Marvin Gaye. They were Marvin Gaye's manager, Stephen Hill. So when we meet people, and, of course, when my dad died at his funeral, at his wake, he had two prime ministers who were there. Edward Seaga, who my mother grew up with Edward Seaga as a young, because she was involved in politics, and and PJ Patterson was the Prime Minister after him, but it was not like, oh, the Prime Minister's in the house, because they came around to the house to have a drink and, went to the funeral. But, so in Jamaica, we don't have this celebrity culture. So consequently, growing up, I don't feel that way. So when I'm in London and I have to just walk down the road or get on a bus or get on a tube, and people are like, what are you doing on the tube? I'm saying, well, I'm in London, I'm trying to get somewhere, that's the best way to get there. If you want to come up and talk to me, fine. If you don't, no problem. I don't, whereas, so my life has always been that way.
And was your father's illness hard to deal with?
My father had died of prostate cancer. And I mentioned the fact that, if he went to war, he would have been killed, because he would have been straight off the boat and straight off whatever. And being an army officer and being a big, strong man, I knew that my father, when I had my prostate taken, and I'm not a medical person, but apparently it's got to be under 5. Mine was a little bit over, but it was fine. By the time between 0 and 5, by the time they checked my dad's PSA, it was 100, and he just would not get checked. So therefore, there was no way he was going to survive. But being an army officer, he's strong. I'm not going to have the check. I'm not going to do anything. He's like one of those. And I'm saying, growing up, I don't take anything at all. Tablets, pills. If I have a headache, I'm not going to take a headache tablet. If I've got a cold, I think I get that from my father, whereby we just feel invincible. But
and did you think he was invincible?
Well, I when I was younger, yes. Yeah, because when I was younger, because he was a very fit man, up until he would carry my sister when we were 10 up on his shoulders up the stairs. He was very, being in the army, you have to be very sporty. So he did all the sports. He played cricket, rugby. Even in his 50s, he played squash for Jamaica.
Okay.
He played squash for Jamaica, and he was the president of the Squash Rackets Association. And I remember him rupturing I ruptured my patella tendon at my son's wedding, and I did my shoulder. You don't want to see it.
Right.
Can I show you?
Yeah. Show me.
You don't want to see it.
You can show me this now. Here we go. How did you rupture the tendon at the
Playing
wedding?
volleyball, I fell over.
Oh,
so you must be able to see it.
Yeah. No, but at the wedding, what did you do?
Can you see that there?
Oh, God. Yeah. Oh.
So I was just playing volleyball and I fell over and ruptured my patella tendon. Now, that's a bad injury, where your patella pops out and the tendon pops out. And so I'm sitting down, and as I ruptured my patella tendon, went up in there and landed. So, of course, I'm looking at my knee and I'm thinking, my knee's so... I knew I shouldn't do anything because I always get injured when I play football, and it's a sporting wedding. So my son was having games against his wife's family and football and all these sports. Right. And I said, I always get injured. I'm not going to do anything. But I thought, how hard can it be? A little game of volleyball. So then I'm sitting down. I thought, my shoulder feels a bit funny as well. So I looked up and there was my shoulder popping up. But my dad, he would have been about 55 at the time, ruptured both his patella tendons at the same time, playing squash. And the surgeon said he has never seen an injury like that in his life or anything recorded anywhere. Because when you rupture your patella tendon, the tendon that holds your knee in place snaps and your knee pops out. So how can you do 2 at the same time? What he did was, as he put his leg down to make a shot, he ruptured that one. And as he's falling, to stop himself falling, he put his other leg down and he ruptured that one. So he was in plaster for 6 weeks like that. And that's the most vulnerable I've seen my dad. Right. My dad was always strong and physical and boxing and... So, but then towards the end, when it was 2-3 years, and he lost loads of weight, and so it was a blessing, to be honest with you. And we knew that it was time, because there was no hope back. And as much as it was hard, it was difficult to see him in that, particularly seeing him before when he was 15 stone and a big strong man, and then he withered away. But I said I mentioned the whole fact about celebrity culture in Jamaica. No one. So Marvin Gaye, we met, and it's Bob Marley, and Bob Marley used to come to, my mom knew Bob Marley, and so we don't see anyone like that. But I met Nelson Mandela. I had to go to his house and an interview with Nelson Mandela. And that was the only time I felt in awe of anyone. And not because it was Nelson Mandela, was because of how humble he was. All Nelson Mandela kept saying is that greater men than me, Steve Biko, other people who never lived to see the day, and I'm the one who reaps the rewards because I'm the only one around. But his humility was just incredible. So the two greatest men in the world, as far as I'm concerned, because of course you have to look at what Mandela went through, sacrificing his family and everything he went through. And also the fact that when he said what he had to do was convince white South Africa that they still had a big part to play. Because he went to them and he said, listen, we don't know how to run the country. So no, we're going to change. And he had to put black people into certain positions. But we need you to stay to run the country because we don't know how to do it. So a lot of white people then felt, it's going to change. And, we're going to have to leave the country, going to kill us, take our money. But he said, no. We have to come together. And you are still going to be in charge of the country. Don't get me wrong, because we don't have the expertise. So you have to have that humility to know that they have to do that. So the two men, Nelson Mandela and my father, they're the two greatest men as far as I'm concerned in the world.
Do you miss your dad?
Oh, every day. Yeah. Absolutely. And it's strange because I never really, I left when I was 17. They left me when I was 17. So it's not as if, I was with them all the time. But even when I was here by myself at 17, 18, 19, 20, I went to Jamaica once a year. They came here once a year. But the closeness we felt and we had with each other, even when we don't see each other, it's as if we've been together every single day. My sisters and my mum are the same. We rarely see each other. But if you phone and speak to each other, it's as if we're together every day. Because we had such a close upbringing between the ages of, obviously from when I was born, but if you want to talk about 5 and 17, that impact that we had. And just thinking about it, whereby I never really saw them or lived with them since I was 17. But when we speak to each other ever so often, it was as if like we just never left each other.
John, it's been wonderful talking to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, that was John Barnes. There's not much more to say after that, so I'm going to go. We'll see you next week. And don't forget that if you like the show, subscribe on all the usual platforms, and please leave a review. See you next time. Bye.